When people are looking to hire somebody, they're going to look at the quality, right, first of all. And then do I feel something? Do I feel engaged with that? I think that's why the visual is so important, because it allows you to get your foot in the door.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Studio Sherpas podcast, where our number one goal is to help you grow your garden. Just kidding. Grow your video business. Oh my goodness, you guys. Hey, if you don't know me, I'm Ryan Coral, and I am a business owner. I have my own video production business, and people hire us and they like us, even though I'm weird. But my aim with this show is to invite you into a greater community of filmmakers and to inspire you to charge what you're worth and ultimately create a business that doesn't just survive, but thrives. Oh my gosh, you guys, I just thought of the best idea. I'm going to pivot my business. I can be your voiceover guy. This is it. This is a new thing. I just realized that this episode should be sponsored by voiceover talent, Ryan Coral. You can ping me and send me your scripts just kidding. Oh boy, I digress. Hi, it's so good to see you, I'm glad you're here. I'm not drunk. I'm just really happy, filled with joy, and I am joyous-ful that you're here. Actually, you're going to find out why I'm so goofy recording this intro here in the outro. So stick around for the outro. You're not going to want to miss it. Two quick things I want to share. We are hosting our first ever Studio Sherpas mini conference coming up here in I think it's like super late spring or early summer. I forget how the months go. If you are interested in coming and hanging out with other filmmakers and video producers that are trying to make the world a better place and grow their business, shoot me an email to hey@studiosherpas.com and put the word conference in the subject line, and we'll get more info when it's ready. And then if there's something special that you'd want to see, hear, think, or do at the conference here in the Detroit, Michigan area, then write that in the body of the email. The other thing is that I cried the other day. Okay, well, all right. Truth be told, I cry a lot these days, and it's like mostly like good, happy cry. But here's what happened: I got asked to come to my alma mater with a couple other people and sit down in this panel during the chapel service and talk about being a business owner and kind of what I learned at Rochester College back in the day. And oh my gosh, it was I don't want to say embarrassing. I wasn't embarrassed, but like I seriously was a wreck. Driving to this thing and just knowing that, here are the couple of things I want to share. Knowing that community was one of the biggest takeaways for me. My life was impacted hugely by the community of friends that I made while there, and realizing how influential community was going to be for my life over the next 20 years. And then thinking about, my family and I moving to a small town from the cool hip city that we lived in to live intentionally with a couple other families, to kind of have this family on mission together with them and live in this community with them and just love our neighborhood together. That's changed my life. But also what all of this has made me think about is this community, the Studio Sherpas community. And it's just been an incredible ride. And I'm here to say this is the last episode you're ever going to hear. Just kidding. Just kidding about that. I know everybody's jaw just dropped, hit the floor, and then you started crying. You were crying, you big crybaby. But for real here, made me think about you and why Studio Sherpas exists. It exists because of the value that community has had for me in my personal life, but also because it's made my life as an entrepreneur not just good, it has given me a purpose and the ability to grow. It's given me the desire to grow, the accountability required to stretch and to be challenged, and to let the status quo thing, let that be for someone else. That's not for me. So thank you. Thanks for posting all of the awesome stuff online on our social feed, on your social feed. Thank you for your emails where you say to me, thanks for doing the show and thanks for Studio Sherpas and the courses and all that stuff. Thank you for the community of people who have invested into the Studio Sherpas community. I treasure you and I am better because of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You're the best. On to the episode. Filmmaker, software developer, and colorist Denver Riddle from Color Grading Central joined me today, and here is what we talked about. The importance of first impressions and how they can make or break a new client relationship. And I guess I should say, if this is your first episode listening to the Studio Sherpas podcast, maybe this isn't a great first impression. We also talked about the tools that Denver uses to increase his efficiency when color grading. And then we talk about what the heck is color grading. Like, you know, for me, I kind of just share how in the beginning I was like, what? It's just like white balance stuff, right? Yeah, no. And then why doing something is better than nothing when it comes to grading. So stick around to the end. We've got some special offers just for you. And now, episode 117, Denver Riddle, you guys. Here we go. Hey guys, welcome to the Studio Sherpas podcast. My name is Ryan Coral, and welcome. I already said welcome. Welcome one and all in one. You're welcome. And while we're on the theme of welcoming, I would like to welcome our guest to this show, Denver Riddle. Denver Riddle from Color Grading Central. Denver, I'm so happy that you're here, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
You're like, this guy is a nut. He can't even get the intro right.
You got this.
So I'm not going to lie. If you would have asked me, you know, a whole bunch of years ago, I've been doing this 15 years. If you'd asked me a whole bunch of years ago about the importance of color grading, your final piece that you're going to deliver to client, I would say, yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, make sure your white balance is correct and that your shots exposed properly. And, you know, I might like hop into the wheels and make sure it's like some flesh tones look a little fleshy and not like alien. Like, what is the difference between that and what you do?
Well, when I first started, I wanted to just be like a filmmaker and go into filmmaking. And I really loved being behind the camera and trying to capture that cinematic shot and tell a story. And I really just wanted to like please people. I just wanted people to be happy and to feel entertained by what I was creating. But I just really felt like there's this huge gap between what I was able to create when I first bought my first HD camera and what like other people were producing online. And so it was just really a perplexing problem. Like, why did theirs look so much better? So for me, it was just kind of like this obsession of trying to figure out like, what is like a cinematic image? Like what makes it look big budget or like something you see in Hollywood, the big films. And, you know, as I did some research online, I picked up a couple clues here and there based on, you know, people asking questions in the comments below videos. And one of the things that I found that was kind of an experimental thing back in the day was, you know, these little tiny sensors that were in the cameras, the image that it produced, everything was what we'd call extreme depth of field. Like everything was in focus, everything was sharp. And so that really kind of came to define or typify what video looked like. Whereas, you know, when you watch the feature film, like, you know, the filmmakers were able to, you know, really experiment and play with depth of field, and they were able to have their focus in subject, and then everything else behind them just kind of blurred, you know. And so that was kind of a, you know, a thing that really, you know, set the big budget films apart. And so they had these 35 millimeter adapters, which essentially was like a science project. You'd fit your camera with one of these things, and then it actually allowed you to use different 35 millimeter still lenses, you know, from Canon or like Nikon and stuff. And so, you know, once I started doing that, it really felt like I'd solved the first, you know, obstacle of trying to achieve that cinematic look and being able to have more creative control. You know, once I started doing that, you know, that really helped. But then there was just something that was off about my colors compared to what other people like were doing and stuff. And so that's, you know, when I discovered this filmmaker, this wedding filmmaker by the name of Josh Smith out of Louisiana.
Oh yeah,
And
dude.
you know
Cinematic
him.
Bride.
Yes,
Oh my
exactly.
gosh. Yes. Dude, I'm so glad that you even brought this up, because like that was the first time I had seen depth of field, like used, you know, different lenses and whatever. But his stuff was the first that I was like, whoa, what is that?
Yeah.
And I remember him talking like at a conference or something about color grading and maybe just being like that. I think that's when my shift happened of like, oh, this is more than just like white balance and flesh tones, but like there's something that he's doing that's making it look incredible. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, you'd watch and he would put together these trailer cuts of like his films, you know, before he, I guess, released them to the client. And you didn't know if you were, you know, watching a wedding film, like highlight, or you were actually watching like a feature film and you're watching like a trailer for some big blockbuster film. Like, I mean, it just really took your breath away. And as I was looking below one of his videos in the comments, somebody had pointed out that, you know, somebody had asked, why do your colors look so good? And I don't remember if it was Josh or if somebody else responded, but they said that it was his color grading. And for me, like, I knew color correction was important, but, you know, I'd never heard of this word like color grading. And what he was doing is he was, you know, using it to maximum effect to add a stylized look. And it really did make such an impact. And so that was like the second, you know, sort of piece to the puzzle of creating this, you know, just cinematic look in terms of like the visual and stuff. So armed with those two things, and then, you know, when I was first getting started, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I just kind of had an eye for maybe what looked good. So like many of your audience members, I just use like presets. And the equivalent of today, I mean, there's still presets, but the equivalent today would be like LUTs or lookup tables. And I would just slap them on there. And I just go through and I just cycle through a bunch of them until I found something that looked good. And like all of a sudden, like my wedding videos like became like epic looking.
Yes. Great segue. Yes, I feel like, man, I just think that's so, it's super funny. The difference between you and I is I think for in that time period, I think it was, I think Red Giant, Magic Bullet, right?
Yeah. That's what I was using.
Yeah. So we downloaded the Magic Bullet suite and that's what we started doing. We would just do the exact same thing. We'd find a color or feel and then dial it back or not, and just be embarrassed, like, you know. Like,
sometimes it'd be like, for many years, it was just like over the top, like way too much, too heavy of a look and stuff. And you would catch some flack for that.
Yes. It makes you just want to post one of my, like, the very first preset collections that I purchased even before Magic Bullet. Every clip, it was a wedding film, and every clip I used a different tone, a different.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like
so
switch it up a little bit.
The couple loved it. They were like, this is amazing. It's so terrible. So how did that progress? How did that become? Because here's what I was going to say. The difference is you and I never learned. I just, you know, we were okay with the presets, and then eventually we kind of faded away from using presets at all, and then kind of just went back to making sure that we had good color grading. And but you kind of went next level with all of this.
Yes. Well, you know, at the time, you know, I was finishing college, and, you know, I pursued like a film degree and got like a bachelor in that. But then it was like, you know, it was the year 2008. And then like all of a sudden, like September, October, like the recession happened. And like all of a sudden, like I wasn't getting like any wedding work, you know, and I hadn't become established long enough in the business to have been able to build up a large enough clientele that through networking, you know, I could get, you know, book new work. And so, you know, that was just a really hard time just because I just had zero opportunities. And just living in Utah, there's just, you know, since that time, the film industry has grown a lot. And now there's, you know, a film studio in Park City, you know, where they have the Sundance Film Festival, but there just wasn't a lot of opportunities. And so I just kind of really focused, you know, on my craft and putting together a body of work and demo reel that would help me to stand out. And by that point, I felt like I had achieved a level or gotten to a point where I was able to make, those powerful first impressions. And, through looking around for different work and even responding to like Craigslist ads, I finally found a company that I was able to interview with and get hired at. And, I found out months later after, I, kind of built a relationship and had become more comfortable with my boss, that they were seriously, they had it narrowed down to like 12 different, contenders for my spot for this position. And, what I found out was one of the biggest things that stood out was, my use of, lenses and my use of color grading it. And that really, allowed me to set myself apart. Because, there's this statistic out there that the average first impression is formed in 27 seconds, or at least the average is 27 seconds that somebody will form like a first impression. And so, when people are looking to hire somebody, the first and foremost thing they're going to look at is they're going to look at the quality. Right. What kind of quality does this person put out, first of all? And then do I feel something? Do I feel engaged, with that? And so I knew that was really important. And, I think that's why the visual is so important, because it allows you to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And it's one of those things similar to sound design, right?
Yeah.
It's like you want good mics, you want good audio, but like, what is sound design? And, realizing that, oh man, sound design done really well makes a difference. And it's a subtle difference, but in overall, like, I just like this. I don't really know why I like it. I just watched the new Spider-Man Into the
Spider-Verse.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I freaking just loved it. My kids, we have watched it like 4 times, and the sound design in that film is so good.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Stuff that I wouldn't have ever really thought about. Now that I have a vocabulary for it, I'm like, oh, this is really good sound design. And similar with color grading, we launched our short documentary on the sport of show jumping called Desert Flight last year, and hired a colorist to take that piece from start to finish and color it, because client said, yes, this is a smart way for us to spend some time and money to do this. And you're right. It's like the film without it, it's like, oh, it's good. It's really pretty. With it, creating a mood and a feeling, it's like, oh yeah, like, wow, it's just like next level. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, is there like, how do you attach like dollar value, or can you attach dollar value to the time and energy to put into color grading? Because I guess a follow-up question will be like, how much does somebody, learn and try to apply? Because we can edit our stuff to death, but at some point you need to deliver, and it needs to be good enough. So where do you draw that line, and how do you paint the picture of value in this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, just like you mentioned with, sound design, a music artist would never release a single or an album without it being mastered, right? That's like the last thing. That's, where the magic really happens. And our ears are, actually more discerning to bad audio. You could have an amazing looking visual and watch a piece, and if the audio is crap, if it's craptacular, it's just going to scream like amateur, right? And so fortunately our eyes are a little bit more tolerant. Our eyes kind of adapt and balance like a camera does, like white balance. Our eyes actually are always kind of adjusting. But that's the same thing for video and like the visual. If you're trying to get work or something that you're even paid for, depending on how important the visual is and how, like, I guess, much of a creative aesthetic the director wants, the visual is really important. And so, I wouldn't release anything if I hadn't at least color corrected it, making sure that everything is balanced. So, to just, draw some comparisons in audio. If there's an issue in the audio, like, the microphone being set too far away or any like pops, in the microphone, it's kind of the equivalent of, having shots that don't match, right? So if you're watching a video and there's two shots that look completely different from each other, where there's that visual break in continuity, it really pulls the audience like out of the moment that they're engaging in. And so, that's really important is just having that shot matching. And then above that, then it's how far you can take it creatively in terms of, color theory and color design and just kind of shaping the mood. So I think it all just depends on what it is. Commercials are very heavily graded and stylized. If it's just your basic run-of-the-mill corporate talking head piece, obviously you're not going to go overboard and grade the thing. Maybe just, color correct to make sure that the white balance and the exposure levels look good. But yeah, I think it's ever much as important to the visual as having a good audio mix.
Tell me about the kinds of clients and projects that you've worked on that have been really exciting for you.
For me, the company that I landed my first career job with, I did, all their DPing, their camera work. And also because I kind of had a knack for color correction, I also color graded like all of our pieces and so forth. And what I really loved about color grading is it was just kind of an extension of what I was trying to create on set. And so, it was about 2010 that I really decided that, I want to be a colorist. I really want to focus and obsess. And, I traveled to LA and did some training there. And then I just started to do freelance work and look for clients. And like everybody else, it just kind of started out like small, working with a client here and there. But the thing is, like, because I was so committed and it was something that I was so passionate about, the clients that I did get, I like worked really hard and did everything I could to please them. And so as I was working for this filmmaker in Oregon, I did a job for him, and then a number of months later, he asked me if I would grade a commercial that he was doing for like Facebook. And I was like, wow, that's so great. That's such an exciting opportunity. And I was flattered and honored that, he chose me. He picked me to work with him. And so, it was a fun project. The creative was really good. The production value was great. And, I graded that piece for him. And again, I just bent over backwards. I did everything I could just to please him, have great customer service. I just did kind of everything, right. And the next thing that Facebook loved this filmmaker so much, they offered him a job, at Menlo Park. And so he actually relocated to California and started actually working for Facebook. And so it just goes to show you how, networking can really get you into some amazing opportunities and working really, hard and pleasing people with your craft. So, I don't know how much about that you want to hear, but eventually I got into the situation where I was doing client work for Facebook.
Well, I mean, in your resume, as I was looking it over, I was rather impressed. Didn't you do something with Instagram and the filters?
So this same individual, I don't remember the timeline when Facebook bought Instagram, for like $1 billion. And obviously we can see now that was like a wise move with how popular Instagram has become. But in about 2013 was when they were ready to release the video feature on Instagram. That Instagram could start capturing video and sharing videos. And so I don't know what the circumstances were. I don't know if they had previously tried out the photo filters on the video and maybe that didn't work out. but they were looking for somebody whose wheelhouse was color and color grading and stuff. And so it just so happened with the same individual, he just calls me up out of the blue one day and he says, I have an opportunity, but I can't really tell you much about it because you have to sign an NDA. And I'm like, well, I'm already under NDA doing work for Facebook. He says, no, this is actually a little bit different. This is a different NDA. So I signed this new NDA, and next thing you know, he's like, so Instagram is releasing a new video feature, and we're looking for somebody to help with coming up with creating some color presets to work with the new video feature. And so my mind was just like blown. I was just like, I was like, I've totally arrived in my career, and it was such an exciting time to work with him and to work with the engineers on the new Instagram app. So the 13 original video filters in the Instagram app. I actually had an opportunity to create those and work with their engineering team to make that happen.
No big deal. No big deal that all of us have used your, filters. That's cool. All in today's work. No big deal. I'm curious to know, that's congrats. That's super cool, man.
Thank you.
I just loved hearing that success. When you, and I know this is case by case, but I'm just kind of super general. How general can I be here? When you go to you've got client work, it's like, okay, I've got to grade this. Let's say it's a 5-minute long piece. How long does it take to grade a piece? And I know you're going to be like, oh, Ryan, come on, you can't ask that. It's going to, it's like, it depends.
Right.
What's the average 3 to 5 minute piece that you might get that might come across your way that you would grade?
If it's a 3 to 5 minute piece and the client is just expecting just a basic first pass color correction, it shouldn't even take longer than an hour. And it depends on how many shots there are. And the complexity of, it depends on how well it's shot. If it's shot really well, it doesn't need much. I mean, sometimes, color correction, you're just kind of polishing a turd, right. Just trying to get something out the door. If it's like a trailer for a film or a 30 or 60 second commercial, it could actually take, 2 days.
Okay.
Where you're kind of bouncing ideas back and forth with the client. You're sending them different versions and proofs and stuff. Feature film work, you're under a really tight deadline. Yeah. And, to do a feature film could take 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And by that point, if you're actually grading a feature, you definitely want to be working with a control surface, some kind of panel that allows you to work more efficiently. And you've developed the muscle memory over time to be able to fix shots. Because a lot of what you're doing is just kind of balancing shots. So that could take 2 to 3 weeks. I know that for a fact the film Mad Max Fury Road, that the colorist had actually a year just to play with it and just experiment with it. I mean, obviously he wasn't grading that whole entire time, but he was obviously doing other client work, but had that opportunity to just really shape and craft the visual in that film. So it does depend, but it kind of depends on the scope and the needs of the project.
What's the longest that you've spent color grading a piece?
I've probably spent 3 weeks on a feature film, and we were actually using a plugin that we had developed for Final Cut Pro 10 called Color Finale. And, we really wanted to use it and see if we could actually grade a full feature film with, software that we had developed. And it actually worked out. What was really cool is we were able to just pass the XML files. And I actually graded it remotely, but it was able to pass the XML files to the client. They'd open up on their machine, and then all the grades would just be right there.
Gosh, that's crazy. That's super cool. So I'm assuming, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but the majority of people that are listening are not going to be like, oh, cool. All right. I want to shift gears and I want to become a colorist. That sounds amazing. Maybe some people might, but I would say for the most part, people would just be like, yes, I want color grading. So the two options that I see would be to hire somebody like yourself that could color grade our stuff, or to, learn the basics and get a handle on how to do this in an efficient way, in a way that adds value to a film, and not just the way that I would do it, where I just turn the preset on, turn it off, it looks better on. Okay, yeah, we'll go with that. Where does somebody start?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's been a huge shift in the industry across all levels, just because of the technology, the advancement in the technology, the democratization of the tools. Now, DaVinci Resolve, everybody should by now be familiar with Blackmagic Design's DaVinci Resolve. That, piece of software, and it was tied with hardware, back, 10 years ago would cost like, I don't know, $250,000, like the mortgage on a house.
Yeah.
And, it was only, you'd only find a DaVinci system in like, a post-production facility and stuff. Well, Blackmagic Design comes in, buys DaVinci systems or buys their software, and they port it from Unix over to the Mac operating system, and they drop the license price to $1,000. So what does that tell you? Like all of a sudden, here was this Hollywood level production tool, and now anybody with like $1,000 can go out there and buy it and start using it. And the first version that they released was version 8. And what I've noticed with the client work that I've done is a lot of companies and clients have actually shifted a lot of their needs in-house. So they'll actually buy DaVinci and they'll just train their staff on how to use it. And I think because of the progress of DaVinci and how rapidly they've grown, I think the other software makers like Apple's Final Cut and Adobe Premiere, they've paid really close attention to that, and so they've actually improved their color tools a great deal. Adobe has Lumetri, the Lumetri color panel, and you have this whole suite of tools that kind of match and mirror what's in DaVinci. And Apple's done the same thing with Final Cut, where in version 10.4 they released in I think December 2017. It has all the same suite of color tools. And so I think how the industry has shifted is now it's kind of almost become expected that if you can shoot and you can edit, you should also have the ability to color correct and grade your films. Now, for the the small shop, the one-man bands, not everyone has the luxury to hire colorists. They have to be able to wear many hats. And so I think across the board, because of the technical advances and achievements, I think that color grading is something that everybody, they don't have to necessarily specialize in it, but I think that they should be able to have a good grasp on it.
Yeah, that's good. This is a perfect segue. This is a perfect segue for us, for you to talk about Color Grading Central and how that could be a great tool for some of our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started, there was hardly really, if any, resources at all. And so that was a real challenge. And so, I started Color Grading Central because I wanted to be able to help other people create the kind of look for their films that, I was able to. And so we originally started creating, tutorials and stuff to help them, and where we kind of ran into some challenges with, certain software not supporting certain features. I started looking into development. And so, we also, as an aside, we also do software development as well and develop some of our own color tools.
Just as an aside,
yeah. Well, we in 2015 we released, up until that point, Final Cut Pro 10 didn't have, they had built-in color tools, they had the color board, but they didn't have the traditional color wheels and things that people were more familiar with from Final Cut Pro 7. And so when we released Color Finale back in 2015, we introduced color wheels to Final Cut 10 for the first time. We also introduced RGB curves, and we also gave users the ability to apply 3D lookup tables in Final Cut. And so wherever we've seen a need and where we could make the tools better, we've done that through software development.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, just as an aside, we made these cool plugins for Final Cut. That's just good stuff. So walk me through a little bit on if somebody were to say I want more information. I want to try my hand at this. How does Color Grade Central help somebody?
So, I mean, if you come to the colorgradingcentral.com website, you'll find our offerings in terms of our software products, as well as the training that we do. We have a free 1-hour online workshop where people can come on for an hour, and we basically lay the foundation for color grading. If you're a beginner, this is absolutely great. If you're even intermediate or even advanced, it may be good just to see, like the workflow. I mean, that's kind of like one of the big things is like, what are the proper steps to follow in your color correction to be able to get the best quality and to be able to get like the best look. And full disclosure, we do have a special offer on our webinar for our Color Grading Academy that we have for the 3 different platforms: DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere, and Final Cut Pro 10. And as I mentioned, we do have our software products. If you're an Apple Final Cut Pro 10 user, if you're professional, you do a lot of editing, we have our Color Finale plugin that I mentioned earlier. And if color grading is important, but you don't have all the time in the world to study on studying the craft and getting great at it, we just released a new software plugin last year in September 2018 called CinemaGrade. And this is a really new innovative tool that allows you to just throw it on a clip, launch the software, and just feel really comfortable being able to grade on a full interface. Like the actual image is the full interface, and you can actually literally reach in and touch the image, and figuratively with your mouse, and you can just grade away. You can click on something that needs to be brightened and just like drag up. You can do really, really powerful secondary corrections. Like you can change, like, say, the color of the sky from like a cobalt blue to maybe more of like a teal cyan color by just literally clicking on it and dragging, and not having to use HSL curves or having to use like a mask. And so we really saw CinemaGrade as an opportunity for those filmmakers that are completely new to color grading, and they don't want to spend all the time learning all this, all these suite of tools that are found in each of the respective softwares. They can just jump in and feel right at home. If you're like a Photoshop user, or especially like a Lightroom user, it'll actually feel really, really familiar. So we've had a lot of interest from the photography space of photographers coming over into the video space and showing an interest in CinemaGrade.
That's cool. Well, dude, I just love all the stuff that you have going on. You're sort of, I think, a freak of nature in order to, have your hands on all these things and to be doing them really, really well. That was when I'd first seen you online. That's what stood out as like, wow, this guy really has put a lot of time and effort into his message and crafting something that is valuable for filmmakers. So love that you're doing that. What's next? Is there anything on the horizon that you're excited about?
We are continuing development on Color Finale, and we have a new forthcoming version. We haven't really publicized that a lot, so I guess this is kind of like an exclusive. But we have had a lot of interest in users, Color Finale users that want to know like what's the next thing. When we released our CinemaGrade, some people thought that we had abandoned Color Finale, but we have a really strong user base of Color Finale. So that's what I would say is the next thing on the horizon is we got some new and exciting things. I can't divulge any details yet, but we have some big things coming for Final Cut users.
Come on, man! It's a Studio Sherpas audience,
I don't know what the demographics is of your audience. I will say, like, for whatever it's worth, probably most people are using Adobe Premiere, followed by DaVinci Resolve. That's grown tremendously with the editorial tools that are now in it, and then followed by Final Cut Pro 10, which is really fast and modern. And we really love our Apple users, Final Cut users, just because I really think Apple really changed the paradigm. They didn't roll out Final Cut the best, but I think they were really taking 2 steps forward with Final Cut.
Right, for the long game.
Yeah, it's a fully mature, fast modern application now. So we love it.
Yeah, that's great. So best places for people to connect with you. You've dropped the URLs. Anywhere else that they should be heading to if they want to know more about you and what you're up to? If
anyone's specifically interested in cinema grade, just go to www. I apologize. You have to have the www.
//
Yeah, you do have to have the www, but if you go to www.cinemagrade.com, we have a special URL just for cinema grade, but of course everything else can just be found on colorgradingcentral.com as well.
Awesome. And do you live on like Instagram or the Snaps or anything like that?
I do have an Instagram account. The ironic thing is my involvement with Instagram, you think I would, do more on Instagram, push that more, have more followers. But at any rate, the handle for Instagram, because it was very early on that I set up this account, the handle is @colorgrading. So if you want to follow me on @colorgrading, I post some things every now and again. I just actually posted something yesterday. It was my grandfather's birthday, just kind of a little side story. And one thing I thought was cool, and you may have seen some of this. I took a black and white photograph of his parents, my great grandparents, people sadly I never had the opportunity to meet. And I took this black and white photograph into Photoshop, and I added color to it. And so I actually posted kind of like a breakdown video of that on Instagram, which you should check out, which is pretty cool. It's a really kind of a challenging thing. It's kind of a labor of love. But after spending several hours on that, I can really make it pass as though it was shot in color.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Awesome. Denver, this is super fun, man. I love just hearing you chat about something that you're super passionate about and really does, I think, lift our work and make our stuff different from, our competitor down the street and hopefully adds to our bottom line at some point. So appreciate you and excited for all the things that you got going on. Thanks for being on here today.
Thank you, Ryan. My pleasure.
All right, that was super fun episode with Denver. Remember, the show notes, the links, all of that stuff is going to be found at studiosherpas.com/117. Here's some fun stuff too. After the show, Denver and I stayed around for a few more minutes and just talked about the stuff that he's offering. He is extending a 20% discount for Studio Sherpas people. That's you. And just use Studio Sherpas, one word, one chunk together, Studio Sherpas for your coupon code. That is not good for the Academy that he has. That actually is already discounted. So once you go through the link there. So good stuff. Thank you, Denver, for extending that to our peeps. And you're awesome. So here is a podcast review. This is straight up from the iTunes store. And this is from Nick Biz. And the subject is, "We're running a biz and making films collide." Like it. This is a good podcast if you want to run a business. Refreshing to have this resource out there. Lots of technical info in this industry. Nice to get some counterbalance to that on ways to making a living doing this filmmaking thing. Ryan's intros alone might make it worth listening to. Major bonus for this podcast, also sounding great. I'm going to attribute the sounding great to this Heil Pro PR40 microphone. Heil Pro? I think it's just Heil, Heil. PR40 microphone, and Jeremy, our amazing editor, for just making this show sound great. So, and then I just want to give a shout out to myself. All right, Nick Biz, props to you, my friend. That was super fun and probably why I was so goofy at the beginning of this episode. Yeah, so anyway, here we go. What if I told you that was the last review on the iTunes store for me to read and I didn't have any more? Wouldn't that be so sad? Wouldn't that just, and then I was serious. I was like, hey, you guys, I have to end the show because nobody's reviewing it. And I just don't even know if anybody's listening. Wouldn't you feel terrible if you're one of those people that haven't reviewed this show on iTunes yet? I say it every week. So let this be your push. Do it. Just go to iTunes store. You can do it there, or go to studiosherpas.com/iTunes. It will take you right to the iTunes store where you can rate the show and say some fun stuff. So thank you. And I'm super thankful. I love reading that stuff. It's super fun for me. Another shout out for the Academy, our own Academy, studiosherpas.com/academy. And this is, if you're in a spot within your business where you want to get better at the business side of your video business, then check out the Academy. Again, studiosherpas.com/academy. Would love to see you inside of there. And lastly, that's it. You've only got today, my friend. You are only guaranteed this day. So make it great. Push yourself to be your best self. Surround yourself with people, with a community that are for you and for your success, but also give. My wife and I always encourage our kids, and I encourage my staff here. And by doing this, I'm challenging myself with the golden rule. If you live for others, you win. So do to the other people what you would want them to do to you. That's the golden rule. Life is so much richer that way, and you'll see a huge difference in your business when you let that become one of your core values. That's it. Dr. Phil, I was going to say Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil is out of here. Just kidding. But I do like I do like you a lot. So take care. I'll see you later. Adios.